This is Jedi General Pong Krail. I welcome you to the Voice of the Republic podcast. Listen to this podcast. That is in order.
Your reputation precedes you, General. The reputation of a great new podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Voice of the Republic podcast. This is Bonnie Peace, Beru from Star Wars.
Time to see who's smart enough to join the hunt. The hunt for the Voice of the Republic podcast.
So, I hear we're going to be taking out separatists on the Voice of the Republic podcast.
Smaller in number, are we? But larger in mind is the Voice of the Republic podcast. Of all the Jedi, why did I have to end up with the Voice of the Republic podcast? As the Republic juggernaut rolls across the disputed worlds, citizens all across the galaxy turn to the Voice of the Republic podcast for help.
Hello, this is C-3PO, Human Cyborg Relations. Master Luke can't come on the Voice of the Republic today. He's out fighting the stormtroopers that just landed. I shall have him be a guest on the Republic podcast as soon as possible. Oh dear.
Public podcast for help.
Hello, this is C-3PO, Human Cyborg Relations. Master Luke can't come on the Voice of the Republic today. He's out fighting the stormtroopers that just landed. I shall have him be a guest on the Republic podcast as soon as possible. Oh dear.
Hello Star Wars fans across the galaxy, welcome to the Voice of the Republic podcast. My name is Daniel and joining me is fellow host Rory Williamson.
Hello.
And also joining us our co-host Adrian and Lizzie Carty-Dowd. So, hello both of you.
Good evening.
The heating, hello.
Hello both of you, and obviously welcome to Lizzie, which is our first episode.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
We have an actual fangirl now.
yes, no, we don't have to improvise with Andrew to call him Angelina.
Or Danielle, Daniel to call him Daniela.
Hardy, hardy, har. Now, if you'd like to introduce tonight's guest.
We have actor John Morton joining us, who played Rebel pilot Dak Valter and Boba Fett in one of the best been seen. So how are you, John?
You're right there, Jimmy.
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks.
That's Mandalorian for how's it going over there?
Yeah. I wasn't expecting that.
You speak Mandoa? It's a bit of Glaswegian there. Jimmy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a pleasure having you on the podcast now after our meeting at Celebration Year a month ago.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, in essence. Yeah, we did well, didn't we?
Yeah, we definitely did. And survived. That's the most important thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All that band milk.
Yeah, definitely. So, Daniel, do you want to start with the questions?
Sure, so hello there, John.
Hey, Danielle.
My first question for you is, did you enjoy your overall experience in Star Wars?
Yeah, well, it's the original experience, as some of the fans might know in my case, was 4 weeks in 1979 in the late winter, early spring. I came on board to Elstree expecting to do 2 days and ended up working 4 full weeks. So I was there a lot more than I expected and really had a wonderful experience and got to know a lot more about Star Wars than I was really expecting. At the time, I was living in Putney in London and working full-time in theater and film. And it was just a great experience. I commuted every day with another actor named Eugene Lipinski, who is a Polish-Canadian actor. He's quite successful. He's based in Vancouver now. And he was playing one of the rebel pilots. But he actually didn't end up on the screen because he was cast in a major role in a film. I think it was with it was called Bad Timing, and Lucas let him out of his contract, which was good for Eugene. But anyway, he had the experience of being on the set with us for a number of weeks, waiting for stuff to his opportunity to be one of the pilots. But one of the things I wanted to add was that that 4 weeks turned into what is becoming a lifetime involvement with Star Wars when the films were re-released in 1997, 30 years later. Suddenly I was thrust into participating in a lot of the conventions and getting to meet the fans and seeing a lot of my old friends, Jeremy Bulloch being one, but also David Prowse, who I got to know pretty well, and a lot of the others, Kenny and Peter Mayhew, who I didn't know so well, but Kenny I knew, Anthony Daniels and others. And so really since that time I've gotten reconnected with Star Wars, and it's beginning to intensify in the last year or so. I've been doing a lot of appearances this year after having somewhat of a hiatus from about 2003 to 2000.
Awesome. So my second question for you is, out of the two characters you played, which is your favorite?
Well, I have to say Dak is, because that is my character. Although this Boba Fett connection is becoming more of a feature in, I guess, in the sense of the fans and how people see me. Certainly, Celebration 5 and 6 featured the Boba Fett aspects that I had, in that I was seated next to all the Boba Fetts who were there, Dickie Beer and Jeremy and Daniel and Alan Harris. For Celebration 5, we were all placed together, and then, as you all know, for Celebration Europe, we had the 4 Fetts, and then we were joined by Jango Fett, which made kind of an interesting presentation when we finished with the the Maori Haka at the end, which was, I think, a high point for all of us. I'm more, while I think Boba Fett is a cooler character. He's edgy. He's sort of a Han Solo type behind the mask. Dak is more of a Luke Skywalker type, in that he's a young idealistic warrior who actually has quite a backstory that was developed in the video games and some of the role-playing games, and is somewhat tragic hero, and then he gets killed in Empire Strikes Back. But in the backstory, he's very much of an X-wing fighter jock, and part of the Academy at Tirfon. And so all of that's quite interesting. You don't see it on the screen, but that makes him somewhat of a heroic figure amongst those that like living for a purpose or a higher cause, or who are devoted rebels taking on the Empire. That is a little more consistent with the sort of characters that I've played, insofar as I've played more frequently your soldiers and military types. My background was Navy, U.S. Navy, and my mother's family, who were British, were in the forces. So that's something that I can really identify with. Although when I feel like I want to turn to my real rebellious streak, sort of the Clint Eastwood, James Dean, Lee Marvin, Marlon Brando stuff, there's a side of me that always wanted to be a Boba Fett, but I was cast in very few roles that way. So, it's I don't want to say it's alien. Yeah, I have that side, and it's kind of interesting to explore that, with the fans. But two things. I think, I like being able to represent to some of the people that in my corner of fandom that I like to support, particularly those who are firefighters and EMTs and people who are doing things on behalf of their communities and their countries. The DAC representation is very rewarding, and I've enjoyed that when I've met people with the 501st and the Rebel Legion. And on the other hand, with Boba Fett, I feel very strongly that the real Boba Fett is Jeremy Bulloch, and that's his role, and I don't want to take anything away from that. And I was very humbled that he acknowledged myself and Dickie in that interview with Warwick Davis the way he did. I mean, he's a great gent. I'm always very cautious to remind people that Jeremy is Boba Fett, and we were there kind of supporting him.
Awesome. And my third and final question for you is, what is it like to be stomped by an AT-AT?
Well, it can kind of flatten your dimension a bit. Arguably my Star Wars career went real flat after that. The thing that's interesting, that's always worth reminding folks, because in Star Wars, as with Star Trek and Doctor Who, and some of the other science fiction classic series that have a large fan base, we actors and even the people that originally created those series sometimes find themselves knowing less than the fans do. And in the case of Star Wars, the term AT-AT did not exist when I was flattened by the AT-AT. They were referred to as Imperial Snowwalkers, or just Snowwalkers. And as you all probably know, and maybe some of your fans out there to the podcast don't know, a lot of those terms, the terminology AT-AT, came into being with the role-playing games that were originally West End games, where they, for the purposes of role-playing, they started looking at the scripts and giving backstories to the characters, my character included, but also some precision and definition when you were talking about weapons, weapon systems, vehicles, and equipment that were just set dressing on the set. They started being named. It was almost like Adam in the Bible. You suddenly had all this stuff around, and people looked at the script and looked at the storyboards and looked at the films and said, well, what's that? Well, that's going to be Bantha milk, or that's a bad example, but you see where I'm going. So a lot of that stuff was done after, and wasn't in the script, but was developed for and by the fans. And then recycled back into the Star Wars timeline and extended universe, and then you had an issue of continuity, so that everybody understood the definitions and the terminology, and were working off the same page. And that was the function of West End Games when I got back into the Star Wars world in the 90s, and as we all know, has been taken on by Lucasfilm itself, with Leland Chee and the Holocron. But all of that Holocron stuff originated, as I understand it, from West End Games. Maybe one of you all can be more precise on that, but that's my take. And the reason why I guess I got a little bit of expertise in this, not as much as I should, is when Lucasfilm discovered that I was alive and kind of brought me back into the universe. In the late 90s, they also discovered that I was a writer, and for a time they and Del Rey and I were sort of going around with the idea that Dak was going to author a series of first-person accounts, either as short stories or perhaps published books as part of the X-Wing fighter series, working with Mike Stackpole. And in fact, I did an introduction to an anthology of some of his comic book stories on the X-Wing fighter series, and was working pretty closely with Mike in 98, 99. I actually went out to Tempe, Arizona, where he lives, to kind of work that together. So the reason why that didn't happen was they decided that with the imminent release of Episode 1, Phantom Menace, they wanted to shift focus with their fiction onto that point in the timeline, and they de-emphasized the stuff that was going on around Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back.
Awesome. So that's my questions, and thank you, and I'll pass you over to Rory now.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, John, my first question to you is, how did you first get involved with Star Wars?
Yes, that's it's a pretty pedestrian answer, Rory. It's, my agent sent me over to a woman named Irene Lamb, who was casting for Star Wars. And as I recall, she was somewhere down the Fulham Road in, just beyond Chelsea in South Kensington. And I just went in for an interview, talked to her, and she said, okay, we'll let you know. And about a week or so later, my agent got a call saying that they'd like to have John come in as one of the pilots. The agent negotiated all that. I mean, there's a back and forth, to determine if I want to do it, if she wants me to do it, and so forth. And I said, of course, yes. So I arrived on the set several days later, I guess, not knowing exactly what I was doing. And I was told, hey, here's you're gonna be Luke Skywalker's co-pilot. I went, oh, hey, that's really cool, because that means I'll be working with Mark, and I'll have a lot of visibility. And so I was pretty excited. And then they said right away, well, don't get too excited because your character gets killed. In fact, he's already done it. This was, I think, as I recall, in late March or early April of '79, and they had come back already from Norway, where they had shot the exteriors, and a Norwegian extra had actually, done the death scene. So I was not stepped on by the AT-AT. It was an extra from Norway, which I should say anytime I meet anybody from Norway, I asked them if they would see if they could track down who the guy was who was playing Dak, because I'm sure fans would love to have him on the circuit as well.
Definitely. That would be really cool. My second question is, which cast members did you get to talk to off set?
Well, I like to say I was joined at the hip with Mark. I frequently, more often than not, had lunch with him. It seems like it was every day, but it wasn't, I'm sure, because we were on virtually the same schedule, as you would say, waiting to do these shots in the snowspeeders, which were having technical issues. So he and I were together all the time. And because he and I were together, Dave Prowse, liked to hang. And so Dave frequently would have lunch with us, and that's how I got to know him so well. So there were times when I had lunch by myself with Mark, more often than not. But other times, Dave Prowse was with us. And I remember Chris Malcolm, who was a friend of mine who played Zev He dined with us. So, and the cafeteria was, as I recall, in the same building or very near the soundstage at Elstree where we were. So it was really a quick, minute around the corner to go in and eat. And then in other places on the set, Mark and I were usually together, and so I got to know him very well. As far as Harrison Ford, I was introduced to him. I didn't really get to socialize with him. He was pretty, already was kind of had moved into that sort of star persona, and so you really left Harrison alone and gave him his space. In the case of Carrie Fisher, it was somewhat the same. She kept to herself pretty much from the, obviously not so much when she was working with the main actors, but with the rest of us, there is that pecking order that is always well preserved in a film, and actually to a certain extent in theater, where you sort of know where you are, and you don't push it unless you're invited. It's like you don't shake hands with the Queen. If the Queen extends her hand, you take it, but it's that sort of thing when you're dealing with that level of stardom. On the other hand, there were other people like Dave Prowse and Kenny and Tony Daniels, and I should say big stars in my book, because I'd done so much work in London theater, were people like Julian Glover and Dennis Lawson, who were approachable, but they, from a British perspective, and remember I'm half British, and I lived in London all during those years, they were very much revered in the same category of stardom in our own minds as Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, and Harrison Ford. Alec Guinness was not on the set at any time when I was there, so I didn't get a chance to meet him. Billy D. Williams, I had that scene as Boba Fett with him, and I'd say next to Mark and Dave, he was a guy I got to know pretty well, on those 2 days, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him again. He and I are going to be at a convention up in Providence, Rhode Island, in New England in November, and I'm very eager to, reacquaint myself with him. We had some pretty interesting conversations. He was a very thoughtful guy, and I liked him tremendously. And then, of course, there was Jeremy, who I hadn't known, but Jeremy was pretty close to a guy named Steve Lanning, who was Dave Tomlin's assistant. Dave Tomlin, Big Dave, was the first assistant director, and Steve was the second assistant director. And those guys are sort of stars in their own right. I mean, the people off camera that we think of, Ben Burt and Ralph McQuarrie and others, get a lot of attention in terms of what they did to contribute to Star Wars, whether it was art or costumes or puppets or what have you. Dave Tomlin was, I think, one of the greatest assistant directors of our era. He was very expert in big budget films, and he had a group with him, Steve Lanning and Roy Button, who is a big shot now in Britain with Warner Brothers in terms of location or line production and what have you. All those guys were a team that did a number of big budget productions that I was involved in, and so I knew them pretty well as I did some of my fellow actors, particularly the North Americans, the Canadians and the Americans, and I regarded them as very much as friends and colleagues. I worked with Dave Tomlin in Holland on A Bridge Too Far in 1976, and then again on Superman 2. I was involved in that film. Steve Lanning I worked with out in Spain on a film called Cuba. And so he's one guy that I really value. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. He died about 6 years ago. But Dave was a star in his own right, and as I said, probably the best first assistant of his generation. And he did things like Gandhi with Richard Attenborough. I mean, a marvelous man, very skilled, and he made the trains run on time. So not to be forgotten, there was somebody that I really do value, and I like to credit any way I can because he's an unsung hero.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Thanks for answering that. My third question is, what is your favorite memory from working on Star Wars?
When I read that, Rory, I really had to scratch my head. I think it's better for me to turn that around and ask, well, what would you want to hear or know? I honestly don't have a favorite memory. I have a number of anecdotes, and it's not because I didn't enjoy myself, nor is it necessarily that it was all a great memory. It was. I guess there's two things. There's one that's quite funny and one quite serious. The funny one is just an anecdote. The snow on the inside, and again the ice planet didn't have a name, as I recall, Echo Base or Hoth. It might have, but I don't remember it being referred to at the time. What I remember it being referred to is the ice planet, and the interior where the Millennium Falcon was, if you recall, was you saw the passageways and the corridors for the most part that were chiseled out of styrofoam and distressed with sort of an off gray and dirt white and what have you. But all of the floor of the soundstage was covered with snow. Well, that snow, I remember there were bags and bags of this stuff all around, and it was an Imperial Chemical Industries product, ICI, and I was struck by it, and it was dendritic salt. Dendritic salt, I guess, is used to put on the roadways to melt ice, but it's also used for animals, salt blocks and what have you for cows and things like that to get their salt. And there were hundreds and hundreds of bags of these of dendritic salt that was spread all over the place. I did a scene in The Shining with Stanley Kubrick about a month or so later, where I played a Colorado state trooper in the middle of a blizzard, where Scatman Crothers is trying to drive through Colorado to get to the hotel, and he comes across a jackknife trailer, articulated trailer over, I'll never forget it, a green Volkswagen, and that was shot at an airport, an airstrip in Elstree. Must have been about 5 miles from, if that, from the studios. They'd constructed the Jersey Wall, the wall that separated the two sides of the highway. They put this accident, this car crash in the middle of it, and then on one side they was scaffolding and paper mache or whatever, molded plastic. They created the embankment going along, and they'd covered all of it with the dendritic salt that they had scooped up from the ice planet to give the impression that, we were in the middle of a blizzard and the road was covered with snow. And that was right out there in the middle of Elstree or Bourne Woods somewhere. And to Kubrick's credit, there were a lot of things that he did on that film that were on the back lot of Elstree. That were, part of the artifice of the art of filmmaking, and it was classic stuff, really going back to the Keystone Cops in some cases. But yeah, the dendritic salt from Hoth ended up in Colorado in The Shining. So to me, that's kind of a humorous aside that, for those that are interested in the how things get done in filmmaking, it's always amused me. The more serious one, which I think is people should know, those of you that have read a lot about The Empire Strikes Back in particular, know that there was a heck of a lot of pressure on Lucas and the organization, and they were in flux and they were running over budget, and there were issues that they were having back with Alan Ladd and all of that was not immediately obvious to me, although I was there for 4 weeks. But what was obvious is the way the leadership, and it's George and Gary Kurtz in particular, those two men were able to run an organization where the morale was extremely high all the way down to the tea lady. And I'll never forget the tea lady who used to come by. She was a woman probably in her late 60s, early 70s, pushing her tea cart around to all of us, the electricians and the actors and the extras and everybody else, And she had a smile on her face all the time. And I remember her just sort of looking at everybody and saying, "You having a good time? It's lovely, isn't it? It's great." And let me tell you something. I've worked on a lot of films and I've worked in a lot of organizations. When you have that kind of enthusiasm at the bottom rung, the guys or the gals who are responsible at the top are the cause of it. So I would say that it was an amazingly unusual film. Of all the films that I worked in, where the morale and the enthusiasm, the loyalty that everybody had and demonstrating to each other was extraordinary. And to that extent, I like to think that that's one of the reasons why it was no big deal to substitute for Jeremy, me, when they needed to, so he could go off and do what he needed to do, and I got an opportunity to do something else. By the same token, they let Eugene Lipinski go when he got a deal which was good for his career. Another anecdote that sort of reinforces the point is that one of Harrison Ford's great friends was an actor who was quite well known in the day, Treat Williams, who was in town, and he came out to the set one day, and I remember it because I was standing right there, right by the Millennium Falcon. And Treat was saying, "Hey, you guys are having so much fun. Gosh, I wish I was in this film." And somebody looked at him and said, "Well, you want to be?" And he said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Okay, well, we'll give you a uniform costume. Come back tomorrow and play one of the rebel officers." So lo and behold, Treat Williams came back the next day, and he might have been there the day after, and he was part of the window dressing around the Millennium Falcon. I think probably at the time when Carrie Fisher was giving her pep talk before we scrambled the snow speeders. But there was an example of a guy who was as big a star at that time as Harrison Ford, who was so excited by what he saw that he just wanted to put on something, and I don't even know if there's a credit for him in the film, and I'm sure he didn't clear it with his agent. There was none of that folder roll. He just did it. Pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. My final question is, do you enjoy going to conventions and meeting fans of your work?
I very much enjoy it. It really is fun. It's exciting. I love meeting the people and hearing their stories, what they do, how Star Wars had an impact. I mean, it's worldwide. I think in a week or so, Matt Martin at Lucasfilm is going to put up a blog post of my experiences in Essen, and I talk about the scores of folks from all the countries that I could remember that came through, and telling a few of the stories that were told to me when folks came to the autograph table. I think I think the fans of Star Wars are remarkable people. They were motivated by the goodness that was in the film. It's changed their lives, and everybody has a story to tell as to how their lives were changed. And they were, I think, in general, two things came out of it for folks, from what I can gather. It gave people a purpose to use Star Wars to see the larger reason why they do what they do, whatever their calling is. But more generally, it gave people an opportunity for a creative outlet as well. And so you see that with people that come and dress up, or with people that like to, paint or model make, or, when they're constructing, you'll have somebody who might be an electrical engineer. Well, hey, Star Wars has induced them to make R2-D2s. You have somebody like Ashley Eckstein who, has a love of fashion. She's going to do that, and she encourages other women and men who are interested in fashion to do their T-shirts, and it really fosters people's creativity.
Yeah, I agree, definitely, and it's really good. So thank you very much, John, for answering my questions. I'll hand you over to Adrian now.
Okay, thanks, Rory.
Hey, hello, Mr. Morton. Sorry if there's any noise in my background. There's construction workers over my rooftop all day, and I haven't gotten a piece of my mind.
Okay.
So bear with me there. My question to you is, what is your favorite, or at least several favorite Star Wars ships that you would one day dream to own or pilot one day?
Definitely an X-Wing. Yeah, the X-Wing, I know a fair amount about that. I've forgotten a lot of it, but when I was working with Lucasfilm and Del Rey, I was drafting a book proposal on the tactical manual for the X-Wing fighter, and I found it all fascinating. I live where I have access to a military library, and when I was doing the research, I got a number of books out, going back to stuff in the First World War at the beginning of aviation, and incorporated a lot of that and re-engineered it or repurposed it for the Star Wars universe for the X-Wing, and it was just I really enjoyed that, and I really could see myself being a part of that. In particular, I was interested in it because, if you remember, the astromech droids were also part of the X-Wing concept, and that's very similar to aviation today with the advanced aircraft that are out there, where you have a man-machine interface, which expands your capability tremendously at great cost now, so that jet fighters are almost too valuable and expensive to fight, so they don't like to use them. But in the Star Wars universe, the technology, I guess, has been around for so long. It's mature enough that it's cheap, and so it's sort of everywhere, and so that's not an issue. And so you see these things really being used, in creative ways with abandon. So obviously, the X-Wing, because of my knowledge about it, I'd sort of like to get back into it as well. The Snowspeeder, I didn't really do any studies on, and I guess you forgive me for having an attitude to the Snowspeeder. As Dak, that was not his plane. I mean, he was there as the weapons officer for Luke Skywalker, but Dak went into the Snowspeeder as an X-Wing fighter pilot, and there he was, kind of just a backseater, and he didn't do very well.
I assume there was also malfunctions with the vehicle as well, because wasn't it stated like around that time the snow speeders weren't fully tested yet?
Yeah, he had a malfunction in fire control, and I can imagine what was going through his head as he was. Well, that's what was going through my head when I was, blanking out as a dog. You're blankety blank. Yeah. I know it's happening now, and there ain't nothing I can do about it.
Okay.
No, they were a primitive piece of work, and they were an adaptation in some ways of the land speeders. So I don't know. No, I'm an X-wing man.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure all of us at one point thought that it would be cool if we can soon have X-wings made. I know there's been a lot of rumors going on saying that lightsabers will be invented, lasers will be invented. I think it was just a few months ago that I believe a lot of fans were petitioning the construction of a Death Star. So I can probably see an X-wing working, since you have fighter jets now that can take off vertically.
Yeah,
so I'm assuming this could happen as well with the X-wing prototype.
Well, obviously, when you're doing your time travel, through the worms and all that kind of stuff, hyper travel. I mean, that's a whole nother thing, and I believe that will be discovered at some point. There's the riddle of the universe is such that I always remember my father, who was an ordnance engineer in the Navy. He was a career naval officer. He would always say to me when I'd say, "Well, where's the end of the universe?" And he'd say, "Well, Johnny boy, okay, you get to the end of the universe. Well, what's on the other side?" Well, when you start thinking on those concepts, you think in terms of Klein bottles and infinities, and who knows? Somebody's going to figure it out. If you think of what Albert Einstein would have come up with if the computational capabilities that we have now existed in the 1940s, and look what he did come up with. He came up with something that led us to the use of nuclear fission and fusion. I mean, it's
and a lot of great things he's done. I think also my favorite idealist at the time was also Nikola Tesla.
Tesla, yeah.
Yeah, and his idea about the death ray. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how much of a crazy stir it was back then.
Well, I mean, I one of the shows that I worked on was the BBC series called Oppenheimer, about the making of the first atomic bomb in the Manhattan Project. And I mean, that was one of the great tragedies, is that all those scientists really felt tainted insofar as they'd come up with great ideas that with nuclear energy could change the world for good. And yet, because of the situation in the Second World War and then the Cold War, they were compromised, shall we say, to have to do things to turn their research into destructive purposes. And that's one of the sad ironies of all of that period. What I find is kind of interesting today is instead of being negative about that future, there's so much going on that's positive in terms of nanotechnology and alternative plastics that are bioplastics. The future, let's not get negative about it. There's so much that we're learning that you guys that are young, you're going to see some amazing things moving forward. And this is what's so good about Star Wars. Go back to it again. Star Wars came down at a time when, in the United States, we were wrestling with, a complete pessimism, and we had Watergate, we had Vietnam. Everybody was kind of negative, and a lot of stuff that Hollywood was producing was kind of apocalyptic, end of the world negativity. And yet George turned things around, where you said, well, technology isn't necessarily going to lead to Planet of the Apes. It could, World of Wars, or Yeah, it's let's look ahead into the kind of enthusiasm that people had with Flash Gordon and Discovery and so forth, and think positively. And what I find is interesting, I remember meeting a German girl at a convention in Philadelphia, and she wanted to be the first German astronaut. I don't know if she ever made it. She was working on the Hubble telescope program, but she was inspired by Star Wars to come to America and go to work for NASA. This guy that I met in Essen on Sunday, one of the last guys that came up to my my booth, he was a German guy in his mid-30s. He was a civil engineer, and he said, Star Wars changed my life, and I'm the guy who designed and now manage the waste management system for my town of 25,000 people. And what I'm working on right now is converting it into part of an alternative or energy generating system that will enable my town eventually to get off one of the German electricity grids. Well, now, that's pretty neat.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's amazing how things have changed for the better once you set your mind on a positive outlook for it.
Yeah, and I think that's what Lucas did when he did Star Wars, because he was running against the grain. His buddy Francis Ford Coppola, what did he come up with? He came up with The Godfather and Apocalypse Now.
Oh gosh,
were those positive films? I don't think so.
not for me at least.
Yeah, no, they were good films. I'm not taking anything away from Coppola, but yeah, think about it. Coppola went into the dark side. Lucas went into something else.
Exactly. And John, my last question to you is, coming up now with the announcement of the new trilogy and the new TV series, would you at some point like to consider being a voice actor for the Star Wars Rebels show, or at least have some sort of representation of yourself in the new Star Wars trilogy?
Well, I would very much like that because my voice hasn't really aged, and I have to say I did get a chance to meet Dave Filoni. I didn't talk to him about that, but my daughter, who was working for Mary Franklin on the Elite Squad, did happen to meet him working with him backstage shortly afterwards, and he had actually said to her, "Yeah, I met your dad, and I don't think we got his character in our series for the Rebels," which was a little disappointing. But who knows? No, if definitely if there was a shot, that would be something that I think I could come back and do, and I would be very interested in doing it for sure. As far as voiceover work generally, I don't really see it. I haven't had a career as a voiceover actor, although I've done, I've had to dub my own lines, like in Superman 2 and things like that. It's, but I'm not known as a voice actor. But I'd be very, very interested in re-engaging at that level. As far as doing anything on Episode 7, I think it's highly unlikely. I think we'll have to see what the casting will be on all of that. Obviously, the main roles will be people of your generation, people in their 20s, and that's as it should be. Whether they decide to regard the Star Wars actors as a repertory company for whatever purpose and bring us all back as other characters in other costumes or what have you, I doubt that would happen. I think it would be a neat idea. I think the fans would enjoy that. I certainly think all of us that like the reunion aspects would find that just great. But on the other hand, hey, it's another generation, another time, another opportunity for another generation to begin to build a new tradition so that 30 years on, they can come back and do the kind of things we're doing, at the conventions.
Yes, and thank you very much for answering my questions, John. And
Yeah.
I'm going to pass it over to Lizzie over for her questions to be answered now.
All right, thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Lizzie.
Before I start, I just want to say it's an absolute pleasure to get to talk to and hear from you. You've got some really interesting things to say, some really nice anecdotes, and right now I feel like I could take on the whole empire.
Very good, very good. Where are you based, Lizzie?
I'm sorry?
What planet are you on? Where are you based?
I'm usually based in the UK, but I'm actually in Colorado right now, visiting my mother. So.
Oh, I see. Yeah, but where in the UK are you?
Exeter in the southwest.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got a house down in Wiltshire in Bratton, if you know where that is, right by Westbury.
I'm actually pretty terrible at British geography, to be honest, but I can find that pretty easily.
I'll tell you, you come through Westbury, if you're going to Paddington Station, you go Exeter, and then you go Westbury, and then you go Reading, and then you're in Paddington. So I don't know what they call
Now that you mention it, that actually does sound familiar now.
Yep.
Yes.
Well,
I'm usually half asleep on the train to come out here anyway, so it doesn't really register in my brain. But
yeah. Well, my village is about 5 miles, if that, east of Westbury.
Oh, all right.
Do you know Matt Booker?
Who?
Matt Booker. He's got a comic book store in Wiltshire, and I'm trying to remember where it is. It's
and he's also one of the founders of the Jedi News website, the main UK Star Wars website.
He's out
That's
our
probably
way.
what sounds familiar.
Lizzie, he's out our way. The place is in Corsham, which is north of where I am.
All right. I'll have to keep an eye out for that. I'm fairly trapped at the moment. I'm just a student. I haven't got a car and not much reason to actually travel outside of Exeter for the time being. But that might change.
Did you get to Essen?
Unfortunately not. I've been in Colorado all summer visiting family, so unfortunately I'm probably the only one of you here who didn't get to
Dear. Uh-huh.
Actually, I think myself and John are the only ones who did get to go.
Oh, well.
We can be John. We can be Celebration Europe buddies.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great picture.
Hoping for Anaheim.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lizzie, I've interrupted your train of thought. Go ahead.
Not a problem.
Be quiet.
You sort of already answered this with, I think, Daniel's questions. So I wanted to ask, how much of Boba Fett do you actually feel like? And originally I was going to ask, how much do you take credit for? But you pretty much answered that by saying you take no credit whatsoever, saving that for Jeremy and co.
Well, hang on, I'll take some credit. But it will refer back to Jeremy, as Rory will remember. Warwick Davis asked me when he did the Four Fets, what did I bring to the character, and I said Clint Eastwood, because that's what Jeremy said. I asked Jeremy, well, what's my motivation here? How do I bring something to the performance, while you're gone? And he said, think Clint Eastwood. So, to a certain extent, I was very careful in the way that I represented Boba Fett in that one scene, to play everything very slowly and deliberately and menacingly, if you will, as Clint Eastwood would have done in A Fistful of Dollars or anything like that. So, for that one scene, I think I can say that I achieved that. However, here's an anecdote. I guess it was at Celebration 5 down in Orlando. A fan came up to me and said, now, let me get this straight. Which was the scene you were in? And I told him. And he said, yeah, I thought as much. And he said, now, did you do the whole bit in that scene? And I said, yes, I did. And he said, yeah, yes, because the way you walked behind Darth Vader when he went off, to the lift, just wasn't Boba Fett's walk. And I thought to myself, you know, I think he's got something, because I honestly don't remember at that point being in character. I definitely was in character as Jeremy directed me. You know, when he gave me his notes as to how he wanted to play it, or how he should play it. But you know, when that take was finished, then they adjusted the cameras, and the cameras were behind us when we went off. You know, Labat, myself, Billy D, and David. And I think I said to myself, oh, well, I'm just walking here. And I probably did a John Morton walk instead of a Bobette walk. So, you know, that was not good. And this one guy, he busted me. He said, yeah. And I said, well, thank you. I guess, you know, you're a fan that really knows your stuff.
I'm going to have to look out for that next time. Gosh.
See if he's galumphing along like John Morton, or he's gliding like Clint Eastwood, and let me know what you think.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. That's really interesting. I've never actually considered that different actors could actually have different walks, you know, per se.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Well, it's you know, if you're paying attention to detail, which we all should, and sometimes we don't. Yep, that's true. Everybody has their own walking style, and if your walking style naturally is not what your character's is, you're supposed to be on top of that. And I wasn't, evidently.
Well, my second question is, when playing the role Boba Fett, or Dak if you want, did you expect, well, especially Boba, did you expect him to become such a huge fan favorite?
No. Not in the case of Boba, no, and I don't think Jeremy did either. He talks about that. The one thing that's very clear now in hindsight, because of how pervasive the Boba Fett iconography is, and Jeremy said this actually in the interviews at Essen, it's the costume itself. Is what really is quite extraordinary about the character that I think excites people. And Jeremy said, gave one story, which I think will make the point. He said, you know, he put the costume on for the first time, and then was asked to go out and show, I guess, Irving Kershner and George Lucas and Gary. You have to have them take a look at it to see if they were happy. And he said he just walked out onto the set. They weren't even filming that day. He just walked, and everybody kind of turned their head and stopped and looked at it. So the design of that costume, I think, you know, I think Jeremy's absolutely right. You know, makes the character work. Jeremy, of course, brought it to life, as did Dickie in his stunts, and to a certain extent what I was able to do in that one scene. But when you see, well, for example, I think, you know, one thing, there's a woman who she gave me her card, and I had a picture taken with her. She was playing, she came in costume as Amidala in her pre-Senate gown. And then there was another one that was there as Queen Amidala, and I had my picture taken with both of them, and they sent me the photos, and that'll be on the website next week, I guess, when Matt posts it. When I was kind of looking at her background, she was an artist and a librarian in Belgium. She's Belgian. There was a link she had to a post where this guy had done a steampunk Boba Fett rendering of an old Mixmaster, you know, an egg beater. Mm-hmm. So he'd taken this egg beater, this old-fashioned egg beater from, I guess, the 40s or the 50s, and had spray painted it to look, you know, around the themes of Boba Fett's helmet.
Oh, wow.
It's really good. Really good.
Wow.
It's a fine piece. So that's an example of how you see the Boba Fett, iconography going into all sorts of creative areas that are well beyond. It's really interesting. I mean, if you steampunk is a very interesting movement. I've just gotten a little more savvy about it and how steampunk and Star Wars, intersect, both in terms of street theater and artwork and what have you. But that particular Boba Fett piece I thought was fascinating. And at Celebration 6, they did renderings of Boba Fett's helmet to raise money for Make-A-Wish. And so there were about 30 of these helmets in one exhibit booth. And they were all fascinating takes on Boba Fett. One of which I remember that was kind of interesting, if you know your ancient history, the Etruscan helmets were very noteworthy. In Roman times, the way they looked, and they had a sort of a mohawk type brush on the helmet. The Boba Fett helmet actually is reminiscent of that in some ways. Somebody had done an Etruscan Boba.
Wow.
And there was the helmet, and it was fantastic. And all of these things were going for sale to make money for Make-A-Wish, and they all sold.
Gosh, that's amazing. I really wish I'd been there to see it. I'm an artist myself, so I mean I absolutely love seeing, different renderings of Star Wars characters, of props, and the like.
If you send an email to Rory, and Rory, you forward it to me, I'll give you the link to that guy in Belgium. And I think I've seen the Celebration 6 Boba Fett's helmets on a web page somewhere. And if that interests you, I'll get that for you.
That would be wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd be very happy to.
I'm glad you brought up the Boba Fett costume, because my next question is, what was it actually like to be in costume for either character? From a fan and a viewer's point of view, the Dak costume seemed relatively simple, but the Boba Fett costume looked really intricate and even heavy. So what was that like?
I often get asked that question, and honestly, I don't remember that the I thought, actually, the other day that maybe the reason why the costume wasn't heavy, because Dickie's talked about that as well, was because I wasn't wearing the jetpack. But then I saw a picture the other night, taken from behind me, and I was wearing the jetpack. I don't remember it being very heavy. I was and am, I guess, still a pretty strong guy. I was a rower, and I row still, for an alumni crew, rowing, at Henley.
Yeah.
And so I guess, I don't want to, make a big deal out of it. I wasn't like Dave Prowse, but it might be that, I was just really fit. But then on the other hand, Jeremy's an athlete. He was a great cricketer. I don't remember it as being especially heavy. Now, what I do remember, and I tell people this, is the blaster that Boba Fett carries. That was a ridiculously bad designed weapon. Anybody that knows anything about weaponry will tell you that if your weapon is not balanced, you're not going to get a good result. It's not something you want to use. The stock, I can't remember if it was the stock or the muzzle. It was so out of balance that I remember, because I was having to hold it in front of Darth Vader for all the takes for a long time. It was very heavy and out of balance, and it was awkward. So that if one talks about the discomfort of being Boba Fett, that's the only thing I remember. I haven't actually talked to Jeremy about this, but that was very noticeable. Now, the other thing is that maybe the rest of it was all pretty heavy, but with the exception of that walking scene at the end of the sequence, I was just standing there against the bulkhead, so it wasn't that I was having to move around. And it might be that some of the discussion about the armor being heavy and the jetpack comes from Dickie having to do all of his stunts. And Dickie's a pretty tough guy, but it might be that in a day, if you're having to run around in that stuff, it could be pretty tough. No, the armor itself was either a light metal, aluminum or aluminium, as you say, or molded plastic. I just don't remember it as heavy.
All right. And what about the DAC costume?
Oh, that was a piece of cake. I mean, I don't remember. That was fine.
All right. My next question is, which film role, because you talked about the various films you'd been in, which film role, Star Wars or otherwise, do you feel most proud of and why?
It's A Bridge Too Far. It wasn't a demanding role, but it was such a fantastic experience. It was my first experience, and that was out in Holland, near Nijmegen, and everybody in Britain really knew about it. There were still, at that time, in 1976, many veterans from the Second World War that were in the forces, and it was a big story, Operation Market Garden, for the British forces in particular, not so much the Americans. But I can't tell you that particular year, my mother was over for the summer, and she and my father courted during the Blitz. Dad was in the Navy over there in London as a naval observer, and he and my mom, so their reference point was very much the Second World War. And, when I would see all my mother's friends and what have you, there was such eager interest about my filming out there. And everybody had a story to tell that was just epic. And so I felt great pride being a part of that. And also it was my introduction to the film business and the whole experience. And it was a mammoth production. It was huge, with thousands of people in the shots. I remember the first shot that I came to watch the day that I arrived. There were 28 camera crews in various places filming the parachute drop.
Wow.
It was pretty interesting. And then 3 consecutive weekends, they closed the Vaal River, which is one of the tributary. It's part of the delta of the Rhine River. And did the actual crossing to take Nijmegen Bridge. And that was the closest thing to combat that you can possibly imagine. There were explosions going off every which way and guns, and there were thousands of people involved. It was a fascinating experience. I played an Army chaplain, and my only role was, my only lines were the Lord's Prayer, that was intercut with Robert Redford and his character, who was doing the Hail Marys. The stars that were around at that particular time were Redford, Ryan O'Neal, Lord Olivier, and Liv Ullmann, and I got to interact with all of them. It was a fascinating experience, and then of course working with Sir Richard Attenborough was, he was just an amazing guy.
Wow.
Wonderful man. So that I'd say I'm most proud of that, only insofar as that I was part of that experience. I had more visible roles in other films like Cuba with Sean Connery that were interesting in other ways. Doing location work in the south of Spain for 2 months that was a wonderful experience. I think unless you're in a real starring feature role in film, it's the experience that you have being part of it that's more memorable than to be able to, for somebody like me. It's very hard when you're a feature doing what's called an under 5-line role to really nail it so that it's memorable. It can be done. I never really had any scenes, I would say, that I can say from an acting perspective afforded me that opportunity. So therefore, if I spoke about London theater and some of the roles I played there, they were much more rewarding, as an acting challenge and bringing something to the character. Particularly, I'm thinking of one play, The Lady or the Tiger, where I had the matinee idol leading role. And, whatever it is that I was able to bring to that role is what got me started in acting in London and got my equity card. And I gather from what people say is that I brought something unique to the role that nobody else could do. And I know they've revived the play twice since then, and it's not been successful and gotten very bad reviews. So I guess that, from an acting standpoint, was the most satisfying. But I think the experience of being involved in productions like The Empire Strikes Back, for me personally, are a little more broad experience rather than just as an actor of things that I've been very proud of. For example, I was working on the lighting staff of the Royal Shakespeare Company for a number of years in between my acting jobs. And one of the things that I'm most proud of is that I was involved in the lighting, the lighting side for Nicholas Nickleby, which is an amazing production. Trevor Nunn did it. Ben Kingsley was in it just before he did Gandhi. And then for 3 years, I worked as the chief electrician for the Rocky Horror Show at the Kings Road Theater, where I was mixing sound and doing the lights and responsible for all the stage electrics. That was a fascinating experience, and I'm proud of being involved in that. In fact, my first wife, I got her a job as a follow spot operator at a time when women did not work in stage electrics, and I think, with one exception, Jeannie was the first woman to ever work as a stage electrician in London in 1975. And when Rocky transferred and closed in the West End, all the stage electric staff and sound operator were women. So she sort of opened that up. I'm a little proud of that.
Wow, that's really quite an achievement. So well done there.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. She was a writer, reporter for the New York Times in the London bureau.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and why she did the job is, frankly, we needed the money, and it was a real hard sell to get her hired because they didn't want to give it to a woman. And so one of my friends, who was the assistant electrician, a guy named Hal Watkins, a wonderful bear of a Welshman, said, "Well, I'll make sure she does it right." And so they hired her, but she would come in from Fleet Street in her Fleet Street, business suits and high heels, and looking like a lawyer or a solicitor, all dressed to the nines, and she'd be up there, on the follow spot perch, and you can imagine of all of us, crusty old electricians looking pretty grubby, and here you had this woman dressed up like she was a debutante, and she found that a follow spot has a 5 kilowatt bulb, so it gets pretty hot. So the only way that her hands could survive the heat, she was a woman and she was, not a crusty electrician, was if she put on these gloves. And so she had these little white gloves that she wore to insulate her hands. And so not only was she dressed in a business suit, one of those kind of blue pinstripe dresses with a jacket and a white shirt and a bow or something.
Mm-hmm.
Have her high heels and these white gloves. It was quite a statement.
Wow.
That was
Right
at the
then.
King's Theater.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
That was at the King's Road Theater on King's Road in Chelsea. That's where the show was at that time.
Right. Gosh. Right then, my final question is slightly unusual, slightly off topic, but I'm almost obliged to ask it. What do you think of the Nemoidians?
What? Say again?
What do you think of the Nemoidians? The Trade Federation guys from episode 1.
Okay. Oh, you lost me there. I'm really sorry. You know, my exit line is not.
Oh dear. Do you like them? Do you hate them? Do you have no specific feelings to them?
Do you know their existence?
Below everything that I've said, I have no clue.
All right, fair enough.
I mean, I've seen the films, the prequels, but I just haven't taken it aboard. I'm so sorry, Lizzie.
That's all right. That's not supposed to be really a serious question. Just honestly, really for my curiosity, because I mean, I absolutely adore them. So, and a lot of people actually hate them. So.
Well, I'm hearing all the folks at the other end of the podcast blowing raspberries.
I'm not growing a raspberry.
It's probably my brother that's doing it.
Probably. Raspberries, eh? Now I'm hungry.
Trust you.
Couldn't resist.
Anyway, I didn't mean to derail the interview or anything. That was really my last question.
Well, Liz, I mean, you have to put a little levity in here. You know, here we were getting on these high topics, and it was like, you know, I was on a roll, and you got it. You know, that's you know, you just,
I was just curious.
You know, you threw me under the bus. You threw me under the AT-AT. I'm flat.
Let it be known, Lizzie caused the death of Rebel pilot Dak Rauter.
Thank you.
You threw him under the AT-AT, flattened him.
So, Lizzie, is that all your questions for John?
Those are all my questions. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to answer them.
So now it's time for call-ins. So all the fans out there know what to do. Either if you've got me or Rory on Skype, then and John's disappeared. Okay, fans, sorry, but you're not. Oh wait, yes.
Yep, I'm back. You back?
Yeah, we've got John here. Yeah. Okay, so time for fan calls. You know the usual. If you've got me or Rory on Skype, then just send us a message and we'll add you in. Or call in channel 1138 at 321-800-5802. So yeah, so we'll be taking live calls now.
In the meantime, any questions from the chat?
Yeah, sorry. I fell asleep there for a second. Let's look, see if there's anything earlier in
Late
the
out
chat.
there at Greenwich time. What? It must be 11:22.
It is.
Well, 4:22 here.
Not in the morning, I hope.
No, just in the afternoon. I have done podcasts that early, though. My last podcast took place at 4 in the morning UK time. So this is quite a blessing.
I'm sure it must be.
Oh yes, at least it's earlier.
I remember a time. I remember one of my first ever podcasts. I had to wake up at 8 a.m. to do it.
God, that's ambitious.
I know, right?
You wouldn't see me doing a podcast at that time of the morning. That's when I'm going to bed.
Well, it was the only time that worked.
Well, that's unfortunately the same thing with 8 a.m. my time for that one. Anyway, Dan, any questions now in the chat?
The chat's gone very quiet for some reason. I wonder if some AT-ATs attacked it.
Oh dear.
Yeah, nothing's impossible.
Maybe some Nemoidian derailed it.
Well, we've got a question from Robin Gladder who says, has John had the chance or the opportunity to try on any fan-made Boba Fett costumes?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I've signed a lot of fan-made helmets, though.
What's the most interesting thing that you've signed?
I've signed people's bodies.
I think every actor or actress has had that unfortunate moment a few times.
But yes, I think that might be all the callers for tonight.
So
Oh,
anyway,
really?
John,
Hold on 1 minute. Let me see if I can try and prompt something. Hang on.
We'll just sit here and see what the Pneumodium produces.
Beg your pardon?
You don't want to know.
Okay.
And this is where we start losing it again.
Hang on. We might have a question coming in.
Ooh.
Hold on.
Breaking news.
I don't want to say who.
Some random. We'll keep it anonymous. 1, 2, 3.
Well, I can tell you, but you'll probably laugh. If this person will take the hint and ask a question.
Is it PT?
Sorry?
Is it PT?
Who's that?
Peter.
God.
Yeah, that's probably him. Ladies and gentlemen, that's actually my dad, I think.
What?
I think my dad has actually joined the chat.
Hey, Dad.
No. What chat?
Isn't there a chat?
I'm
Okay,
lost. Okay, I'm
yeah.
confused.
So we both now know Lizzie and Dan have both had faint freezes in the last minute.
I think I need to go and lie down.
And I'm supposed to be the one with the headache here.
That's the first I've heard of it all night.
Yeah, good point. I don't usually disclose my headaches.
I've still got these aspirins if you want them.
No, please don't. Anyway, John, I actually have another question for you while we wait for anyone in the chat to leave any questions. As an actor yourself, what is your opinion on this topic? What do you think the role of a stand-in is, and is it any different from what you did as Boba Fett?
Well, yes. A stand-in is someone who stands in place of the actor when they're setting up the lights and the cameras. So that's a fairly specific term, and sometimes you have actors that have their own stand-ins because they look like the actor, or they have the same skin tone, or what have you, or they're the same size. So there are people who make a living by being a stand-in for Harrison Ford, or to give a name. And they've been in a number of films as Harrison's stand-in.
That's very interesting, thanks.
And
Liz,
we
I hear you
have...
have a question.
Okay.
Right,
In that case, I'll wait.
Sorry, is it my turn?
No, yeah, you go ahead. This one can wait.
All right.
Ladies
We've
first.
got a question that came in via Skype from Star Wars fan Peter, and he wants to know what's your next acting role, if you have one.
Well, I'm not in the business anymore. I still have my equity card, so I haven't got anything online as an actor. I'm basically a writer nowadays.
Right.
But the only thing I did do some acting roles in Washington some years ago, but for staged readings and things like that. But I really don't get involved in that now.
All right.
Dan, I think you have a question.
Yeah, we've got a question in the chat. I believe. Comes from Paul Dunn, and he asks, is
Paul
there a
Dune? That's a new one.
My brain's starting to shut down after all what's happened.
Yes, we know.
He said, is there a reason behind the fact there wasn't a 4 FET photo shot at Celebration Europe 2? He said it would have been a good shot.
There was a number of backstage photos. There were photos taken of all of us, and in fact, there were 5 of us. The 5 FETs when we did the interview with Warwick Davis.
Oh, interesting.
So there were Celebration Europe photographers there. I don't know what they've done with the photos.
Keep an eye out for them then. But yes, that's all our questions, I believe.
So thank you very much for joining us today, John. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
It's been fun.
Yes, definitely
Great
a great interview.
Yeah, and hopefully we can
thanks
talk
so
to you
much for
some
your
other
time.
Right. Well, it's my pleasure, Lizzie. I will anticipate your email, but if I get to it before you do, Rory, I'll send you the links for her.
Okay.
Lovely. Thank you so much again.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Talk to you some other time, Ben. May the force be with you.
Yeah, and as they say in Ireland, may the farce be with you.
That was good.
Yeah, that was definitely a good one.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That was definitely one of our best interviews.
oh,
yet.
definitely. He managed to mix history with Star Wars and yet still get us to just sit there fascinated what was happening.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's the first interview that I just couldn't take my headphones off wherever I went and just like walking across the room with my headphones still on.
Yeah. Yeah, the only time I took my headphones off was actually to get my John Morton autograph off the wall and put it beside me.
Right.
And yes, currently beside me.
But yes, it seems we've lost Adrian as well.
Not
Yeah.
again.
Yes, but that kind of went out a weird way. But
He left in a very dramatic way. We'll just say it that way.
yes,
So, you ready to move on to the discussion topics?
yes, and our first discussion of the night is the rumor that the Star Wars: The Clone Wars bonus content will be going to Apple TV. This just makes me angry. Why do we? I don't even want to be part of Apple or anything like that. I don't even want to. Why can't they just be normal and put it somewhere where everybody can see it and you don't have to sign up to the bloody Apple people?
I agree.
How much credence is behind this rumor? Where are we getting it from exactly?
It's from Jedi. It's from JediNews.co.uk, a website we mentioned earlier. It's very reliable, but
right.
Who knows? Like I think we can all agree until it's officially announced, anything is a rumor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I have a few opinions to throw in this topic, and I mean logical opinions before I probably completely rage. One thing I will say first of all is I know it's not a TV, but a computer. It was Apple. Like, not many of you may not know this because I don't really talk about my past work a lot. But when I did work experience a year or two ago, one of the places I worked at was a computer shop called Micropro Computers, like a 5 to 10 minute walk from my house. I won't go into much detail about the work there, but let's just say half the time it wasn't really work because they really didn't know what to do with me, to be honest.
Let's just put him in the corner.
Essentially. For like 2 hours, this might even have been the first day, or I think it was the first day. For 2 hours, they just had me in the main office/workshop type area, just testing out this Apple computer for 2 hours straight, testing games, Facebook, whatever you want. Really, I could just do it all, except YouTube, because YouTube was blocked on that computer. But you get what I mean.
Yeah.
I just for 2 hours on the Apple computer, and compared to every other computer I've ever used in my lifetime, it was easily the worst. It was good, but the navigation was awful.
I won't dislike the fact that they say they're good stuff, but I mean, I've used an Apple computer before, which was a Star Wars Fan Fundy. You'll remember that, Rory? And I must have spent like 10-15 minutes just sitting there looking where I could find the USB thing where I plugged it in, and I'm just like, okay. Usually on my usual computer, I go to folders and it's there. But on Apple, you can't find folders anywhere.
Well, at my university, I'm a physics student, and the physics department has nothing but Apple computers. It makes life absolutely miserable. But
I would just leave. I would just leave. That's what I would do.
And the sad thing is, literally every other department at the university has Windows or Linux or something simple. Just the physics department has Apple.
Because it's physics and they try to be fancy.
I mean, my new laptop that my school lent for me back in June is Windows 8. And I mean, Dan, you know I've hated on Windows 8 a bit because it's terrible. But even how bad Windows 8 is, it doesn't compare to how bad Apple is. I mean, that computer, 2 hours. 2 hours. I never thought I'd actually hear myself say this, but 2 hours with a computer. I didn't like the computer. It wasn't a computer. I mean, I love computers. In fact, most of my life is spent on them now. Most of my work and projects is, but I didn't even... That computer... I don't even go there. It was...
I don't think we'll get you started, because if you keep going on and on, we could just convert this episode into the Apple rant.
Yeah, okay, I'll get slightly back more on topic related to the bonus content rumors have been on Apple TV. I will say two logical things. I won't even actually go there. One, I want to make 2 points. One of them is in favor that this rumor may be true. One of them is against it. The first thing I'll say, which is that the rumor could be true, is we know Pablo Hidalgo and Dave Filoni have both stated that it won't be an obvious thing, first of all. Like, they're looking for, and I quote this for facts, outside the box methods to release it. So that obviously tells you that it's not, going to be an obvious thing. One thing that I'm going to say against it is they've also stated that they're going to actually make it so that lots of fans can get it. They're specifically looking for a way to ensure lots of the fans can get the content. So, I mean, there's a point for and against it. I mean, I know I don't want it to happen, but who knows? It could. I mean, for all we know, it could. For we know, it could be released on Apple TV first, and later on DVD/Blu-ray later.
Well, the thing that worries me is that, and that might again lend some credence to this, is that at Celebration Europe they showed 3D episode 2, didn't they?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Good. They showed 3D episode 2. So really, only a small amount of the fan base was actually able to see it. Now, maybe much of the fan base didn't want to see it, but honestly, I've heard more people say that they were excited for it than people who said they didn't care. So, in my mind, that tells me that Disney is not entirely against making certain things available for only certain members of the fan base based upon either their location or what equipment they may have. So that's really the only thing that worries me about it.
Yeah. Well, one thing I will say against that, Lizzie, gotta put this into as good words as possible, is Celebration Europe, the planning for it began before Disney took over. You have to understand that. I don't think
Fair
Disney had anything to do with Celebration Europe 2, really, aside from the Club Penguin store, which
There was a Club Penguin store? What?
yeah, they had one. I just saw it and I was like, I'm not going anywhere near that.
Disney.
Yeah. But yeah, I think
Who doesn't like Club Penguin?
I think with Celebration Anaheim, Disney would have more of a say in it. But yeah, I honestly don't think they had much of a say with Celebration Europe. But I think it's regardless. If they don't show it to the rest of the world, I mean, it's a good thing, you know. It's in a sense good that they at least showed it to some bands, because they could have just said, okay, we're not releasing it in cinemas, we'll never release it, so, you know.
Well, I know that Celebration Europe was actually, you know, in the process of being developed before Disney took over, but at the same time, if I remember correctly, the announcement came after Disney had taken over and after they had made the announcement that they were quote-unquote postponing the other two 3D prequels. So perhaps it was a Disney decision, perhaps it wasn't, I don't know.
No, it can't have been, because Celebration Europe was announced back in August last year. Disney took over in October and November.
Yes, but the announcement that prequel, that 3D episode 2 was going to be shut up, was going to be playing. When did that came, like in, I want to say like March or April or May.
Yeah, it was
thereabouts. So well after Disney had taken over.
Yeah. Let's just all agree that we can kiss Apple's butt and maybe.
There's a lot of love in the chat for Apple.
And Disney.
I've actually not heard anything about Disney. It's all been Apple in the live chat at the moment, and somebody mentioned an apple a day keeps Rory away, but I don't know what that was about.
Just because I like fruit doesn't mean.
And then
go there.
Somebody else reckons that Rory would love. Rory loved that Club Penguin store, really.
What?
I will not reveal his name for safety.
I'm gonna read the chat anyway later, so.
Run fast, run far, the person that wrote that.
That's my line!
You broke Rory.
I broke Rory. Look what you've done, people in the chat.
What? They didn't say run fast, run fair.
No, okay, that's what broke you. Okay, that's random. Talking about Club Penguin or Apple doesn't break you, but talking about run fast, run far does break you. Wow.
Well, all three mixed together, you know, just blowing me up from inside, isn't it?
Apple, love heart.
I'm being pointed here on purpose.
Welcome to Rory's rant, Lizzie.
Rory's rant. That should be a new segment on the podcast.
Oh, it used to be a segment.
Are you serious?
Yeah, like in the first 6 or so episodes, Dan was like, "Right, what are you gonna rant about this week, Rory?" And I'm like, "Well,
we should bring that back for the 50th anniversary. 50th anniversary, 50th episode versary, as I call it now.
I want my bonus content episodes.
As you were saying about the 3D Attack of the Clones, you know, going to a certain thing and just having it thing. Well, I mean, I'm sure other people wanted to see it that weren't there and all that, and I'm sure they would have loved to see it, but oh well, it's gone to a certain.
Well, at the same time, this isn't against either of your points because you both have made great points. But at the same time, think about it this way: at every celebration, there's at least a few, usually a lot of unique things that only people who attend that celebration are able to see.
Definitely.
This isn't a you. I mean, like some
celebration's unique.
And I mean, and you made a point earlier that just because it came out on Apple TV now doesn't mean that it won't come out on other devices later. Same thing with speak. Now I'm starting to break. That 3D episode 2 won't come out in theaters, in a couple of years or something.
Yeah, definitely.
I've been told to shut up, apparently.
But yes, I think before we go on a really big rant or break Rory even more with what's happening in the chat, I think it's time to move on to our next discussion of tonight. So
My bonus content episodes, and the same time as everyone else, definitely.
So our next topic tonight is discussing the upcoming Lego Star Wars The Yoda Chronicles Menace of the Sith trailer, and I actually saw this one today.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, it was...
Watched Lego?
Yes, I watched Lego. I know, this is like the biggest moment.
This is the biggest or horse moment ever? What? We've just identified Dan's new species.
Watch it, you.
Horse Dan.
Well, actually,
Dan,
there's somebody on Skype that I won't identify the name of, but they've got me as Unicorn Dan on their Skype.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm guessing unicorn and horse. But I think we're supposed to discuss Lego here and not watch Species Dan is. We can
But we just decided Dan's the rabbit horseman.
We can rant and discuss about this later, but that's not the point. And now it's Lego. And unless you want to make a Lego horse version of me, then let's go.
Oh my
Challenge
god.
accepted.
Oh god, okay.
This has been approved.
Got it. And that's your project for this week, Lizzie.
No, it's the next concept for the 3D animation. We have to create a horseman with Dan's face.
Oh my word.
It'll
That is
still
the
look-
stuff of nightmares then.
It'll still look better than the
well,
giraffe with Billy Scout's face.
Lizzie, let's look at it this way. Would you rather have Dan as a rabbit horseman or a three-eyed beetle man?
A three-eyed beetle man, did you say?
Yeah.
Wait a sec.
I'm getting an image in my head that it would look vaguely like a three-eyed Nemoidian. So,
Wait.
that
Nemoidians.
may not be such a bad thing.
So people in the chat, what do you think? What species should I be?
Really? We're gonna ask them that?
Well, I'll keep them entertained while we talk about the Yoda thing.
Yoda Chronicles.
So, what did you think of it?
It was good. It was entertaining. I enjoyed seeing Obi-Wan and Reiko Hardeen's outfit in the trailer. That was in Lego form. That was very interesting and a nice touch. Yeah, all those Jack 14 clones. That was a lot of them. Yeah, that was a lot. Yeah, it was funny when he used Force Lightning on Yoda, and Yoda didn't see it coming. Yeah, and the funny part, of course, when Obi-Wan again made Maul lose his legs. That was,
That was funny. Just like,
Yeah.
oh, cool. He just like,
yeah, and then I think my favorite part, well, maybe not my favorite part, but I think the funniest part was the actual end bit with the Padawans. When one of the Padawans is like, my mom says I shouldn't be out in space this late.
that was fun. I just cracked myself.
Yeah, it was just like, oh yeah, it sounds like a typical stereotypical child. Typical stereotypical child. That didn't sound right.
Stereotypical.
Oh, typical stereotypical. Oh, forget it. Let's just go stereotypical.
Oh my god, this episode started so well, and now it's just gone downhill.
You broke Ruri, that's what happened.
At least it's entertaining.
Yes, definitely.
What did you think of it, Lizzie?
Sorry?
What did you think of the Lego teaser thing?
I'm quite interested actually by it. I've never, please go lightly on me. I've never actually seen any of the Lego mini films. I'm very ashamed to say that.
And you've broken him.
Broken again, yeah. I have, in my defense, I did see the mini film on Lego.com that did have Newt Gunray.
Well, that explains why you saw it then.
The one where he likes cookies. That's my new headcanon.
Cookies.
Oh my god!
Face desk.
Oh no! Oh no! I'm gonna have to draw Newt Gunray as the Cookie Monster now, aren't I?
Well, I'll eat him alive, so that won't be advised.
Cookie Monster wearing his
a Newt
outfit.
Gunray hat. Yes.
Somebody needs to get on that with Photoshop.
I'll do it. Challenge accepted.
God, you've got a lot of challenges.
Sorry?
You got another challenge?
I've got so many challenges. I've got so much to do this week.
We're gonna have to.
Sorry?
We're gonna have to open a new section on the podcast. Let's challenge Lizzie.
Yes.
No, don't even go there, Rory.
What?
You heard nothing.
What do you say?
Nothing. Just continue.
You know this. I can just listen to it later online.
Oh, that's true.
Please do. You can go through 1 hour 15 minutes for it.
Well, no, because it might have been blocked out with me saying no, Rory. So hopefully.
You wish.
No, I don't really. But anyway,
What
but
do
yeah,
you
it was
definitely
definitely a good trailer. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm saying that when I've never really
I have
said
to
a
admit,
lot.
I got very excited for a moment when Anakin was shoving the lightsaber through the doors. You know, he was saying like, he was,
Oh, yeah.
what is it? He said like, "Here's Annie" or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, for a minute, I thought it was the scene on the Trade Federation ship.
It did
And
look
so
like.
I actually rewinded and looked very closely, and I thought, "Is that Newton Rune there?" It's like, no, it's battle droids.
Just like, oh. 360
Still hoping for it one day, though.
360-degree mid-turn.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think that's pretty.
Moving on.
Oh, and nobody's wanted to say what species I am on the live chat. So okay then.
Well,
So
they must all agree with me then.
well, I'm a horse,
No, you're Dan the Rabbit Horseman.
and at least I'm not the three-eyed beetle.
Don't call Lizzie that. That's not nice.
Oh, thanks. Hey, I'm closer to an Nemoidian than you, so.
Oh,
that's I mean.
I don't know if that's something to brag about or not.
Oh God, I just don't have the will to live anymore.
Okay.
Because it's almost midnight where you are.
No, it's not. Well, it is.
What is?
Almost.
Sunday's talking to me.
So, our next topic of the night is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic producer
What?
Cassie.
No, you didn't skip one. Never mind me.
And this is why I don't have the will to live. Cassie Hudson returned to work on the Star Wars games. On more Star Wars games. Whatever Star Wars games involved. Star Wars games everywhere.
I'm hoping that's a bit of a ray of hope, a bit of a ray of light or whatever right now. I've said almost everywhere that I can't believe we got such a bad combination of Disney and EA. Now, that's just my personal opinion. Please don't blame me for it. But if we've got a Knights of the Old Republic producer coming back, I mean, I to be honest, I've actually just now started playing the game, and it's absolutely brilliant. But again, I'm hoping with someone like him back on the team, there might be hope yet.
Yeah. And let me guess, your character in Old Republic's an Imodian?
I wish.
Oh.
But I I was throwing fits when the first first non-human, species they killed was a Duros. I was.
Oh God.
Oh my
God. I wouldn't have I wouldn't have wanted to live in that town when what happened.
Oh no.
Just see stuff flying out the window.
No,
Just
I think that's the least of what you'd say. See, say, whatever.
I'm now on a crusade to kill every last Sith I can on that planet for killing that poor innocent Duros. I mean, his friend was standing next to me, looked so sad.
And sometimes I just think it's a game, but there's no point in discussing it. But yeah, it does look hopeful that they're bringing back somebody like that and to work on more Star Wars games. It means that hopefully we'll be getting more Star Wars games.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we get promised so much and then get nothing. But then again, we've probably learned to live with that.
Disney.
Well, we're getting new movies, new TV show, new Battlefront, more video games.
We lost Clone Wars, we lost the 3D prequels, we lost Star Wars 1313. We lost everything.
Well, they said they're considering bringing 1313 back again, but under a different market, Yeah,
by the time that happens,
yeah.
It'll probably be ages before that happens, and then people will have forgotten about 1313, which might mean that it might be, 1313, I'd love to see that again.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited for the news that Katie Hudson is returning, because he's obviously well liked by a lot of Star Wars fans for Knights of the Old Republic. So hopefully he'll bring out some more really good Star Wars video games.
Yeah.
So
hopefully.
Next topic.
Yeah, so our next topic is discussing the new episode 7 cast rumors, which include Alex Pettyfer and Rachel Hardwood.
Sorry, go on.
Go on, both of you. No. Yes. Ladies first.
Ladies first. Oh, that would be you then. No. I'm sorry. That was a cheap shot.
It's your turn. Go, Daniela, take the stage.
So now I'm a female horse rabbit thing.
I was talking to Rory actually, but yeah, let's go with that.
What?
I don't care. I'm going to sit in a dark corner and ignore all of you now.
Oh gosh. What I was going to say was I had a quick look at their filmographies recently, as in the last couple of hours. Well, neither of them seem to have too much, and with Alex Pettyfer, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Not I've never heard.
With him in particular, there were a couple of really, really not very good films he was in. But at the same time, I think one of the great things about Star Wars is that it uses, or rather it has used, actors that no one has heard of or that have very small filmographies. And in the past, they have turned these actors into very big and successful actors and actresses. So I don't actually want to, even though they may not have been in much or in anything good, but I want to reserve judgment because again, they could be absolutely phenomenal, and it could be the start of a bigger career for both of them if indeed the rumor is true.
Definitely.
So I should give my opinion now.
No, you should just sit there in silence and wait until tomorrow morning.
Well,
yes, of course you can.
Well, I'm just going to say it right off. First of all, I am going to get a lot of hate for my opinions here, because I keep an eye on the community. I know a lot of people say Rachel Hardwood. I must confess, never heard of her until yesterday. I will admit though, from looking at pictures of her and looking at filmography, like Lizzie did, I will confess, from looking at those, she does look like she could easily be a Star Wars character.
Yeah, definitely.
I think there's definitely a role in there for her. If she gets, I think she would be definitely easily just nail a Star Wars role. I think, in my opinion. Alex Pettyfer, I do know. I've seen at least one or two of his movies. The better ones, I hope. But okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it right here. I like Alex Pettyfer as an actor, and I know that's going to prove controversial because he actually gets a lot of hate for probably the roles that, as Lizzie mentioned, were not really good films. And I'm going to put this out there right now. The year 2006, one of my favorite book series of all time was the Alex Rider spy novels. In 2006, they made a film based off the first book, and unfortunately, they haven't made any more. The film was a bust at the box office. I really enjoyed it. I mean, obviously, just fanboys and fangirls squealing in rage about changes from the books again. Like, oh my god, they changed the books! But I really enjoyed Stormfront. But what I thought was really good probably was Alex Pettyfer's performance, because when I first watched the opening scene of the film, I was just when they got to their first shot with Alex Rider, played by Alex Pettyfer, I was just like, yeah, that guy is Alex Rider. He is just him. He has nailed that role. I mean, just looking at him, he was Alex Rider. He's just perfect for the role. I will confess, aside from Stormbreaker and I think maybe one other movie, the name that escapes me, I haven't seen most of his performances. Certainly not one of his recent ones anyway. But I think, personally, I can easily see him as a Skywalker child. I totally think they should cast Alex Pettyfer in Star Wars. I think, as Lizzie said, it would definitely be his big moment in being part of Star Wars. I mean, Alex Rider is a very popular book series. It's one of the most popular series around of spy stories, aside from, of course, James Bond, because no spy story can beat James Bond.
Of course not.
No, it's impossible. I mean, the whole Bond legacy, can't be beaten, really, or broken. But yeah, I just thought Alex Pettyfer, he nailed Alex Rider, and for me, that's good enough, honestly, because that role, it wasn't at all easy to cast. I mean, they really needed to get someone who looked the role. I mean, and as I'm sure a lot of you know from some of your favorite book series, if you have any, they'll cast actors who don't look the role. For Stormbreaker, they actually went to the trouble to actually cast some people who looked like the descriptions. Alex Pettyfer was that description, really, and he was unknown before Stormbreaker. In fact, and to be fair, he still is a bit unknown, but yeah, I think he's perfect. I think they better cast him as a Skywalker child. I mean, it's what I think. I'm going to end this on a kind of nostalgia factor moment. I think if I get to go to Celebration Anaheim, I mean, obviously they have Episode 7 cast members there. If they have casted anyone who I've heard of from other projects who still aren't majorly well known, and they get cast in Episode 7, and then they get announced for Celebration Anaheim, and I get to meet them, having known them previously from another work and getting to meet them at a Star Wars event, that would just be very nostalgic and weird. I mean, could you actually imagine that?
Well, I mean, it's possible. It's
it's possible. It'd be very crazy and funny, though.
I mean, there might have been a few actors or actresses that happened in past conventions, or past celebrations, as you should say.
Yeah.
That were appearing in
Yeah, I know of a few non-Star Wars ladies, or one of two of them non-Star Wars at the time, that went to Celebration Europe in London, like Simon Pegg. He, of course, had the role of Dengar at that stage, the voice, and also Colin Baker, the Sixth Doctor.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there are some well-known Star Wars fans that hadn't really been in at that stage, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion on the casting choices. Alex Pettyfer, I think he would nail a Skywalker child, and Rachel Hoodwood, don't know a lot about her, but I think she does look good for the role, and hopefully she gets one.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I probably went on for a while about that, didn't I?
Oh, don't worry. Only half of the chat has fallen asleep.
Yeah, be quiet, you. It's not like Wish Drones on and everyone does. Funny. So,
Yes,
moving on.
very. Yes, well, this is yours, the next one.
And the one after that, I see.
Oh, sorry.
No need to bow down to me.
I wasn't even going to attempt to.
Sure. So, next up, as you all know, about the DEF CON 2 convention that Daniel and Andrew are attending early October, the 6th, I believe, the Sunday. Yeah. And we've already confirmed two pre-arranged video interviews for this convention, DEF CON 2. Those of you who've forgotten, we announced them a couple of weeks ago, so you might have forgotten, but they are with the first two pre-arranged ones, Pam Rose, Lisa Serlin in episode 4 in New Hope, and Brian Wheeler, Ewok Warrior and a Jawa in episode 6, Return of the Jedi. And now we're also going to announce our third pre-arranged video interview, because this guest is now 100% confirmed to be attending DEF CON 2, and that is original trilogy actor from episode 4 in New Hope, John Chapman, who played Rebel Pilot Red 12 in A New Hope. Also, he actually named his character himself as Drifter. So yeah, that's the third interview you can look forward to at DEF CON 2. So Dan, I bet you're excited about interviewing John in person.
Definitely, it'll be a good opportunity to meet John in person, especially as we've conversed with him before.
Yeah, like one of the first episodes, I think.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to meet him in person and hear a bit more about him, and yeah.
Yeah, same with Pam.
Oh yeah, same with Pam, and the same with Brian.
Well, Brian, we haven't interviewed before.
Oh, yeah, that's why it's going to be. It'll definitely be nice to meet him for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. So, anything else you want to say about DEF CON 2 before we move on?
Don't think there's much to say at the moment.
Yeah. No other arranged interviews for that. So, moving on, I can confirm, because I know all of you have been waiting patiently, the first Celebration Year 2 video interview will be uploaded tomorrow. And of course, starting with Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano and the Clone Wars, and I know a lot of you have been anticipating that interview.
God, yeah, so much people spamming. Where's Ashley Eckstein's video? Where's Ashley Eckstein's video? It's just like, sit down and wait.
You think you have it bad? You should see the notifications I get and messages.
It's just like, be quiet, you'll get it when you get it, people.
I mean, now I can understand really if we weren't providing constant updates about when hoping to, or definitely will get it out. Like, I must have given about 5 updates at least on the page of when it will be, or when we're hoping to have it this stage. I mean, I officially confirmed on the page yesterday, I think, that it's coming this Saturday, the interview of Ashley. So now a little patience does go a long way. I mean, I was a very impatient guy a couple of years ago, but I got over that.
The Force has matured you.
I've always been a bit mature, well, a lot mature now, but the Force has made me patient. So let's just leave it at that.
Yes.
So yeah,
But yeah.
that's all we need to discuss, I think.
Yeah, so make sure to check out our YouTube channels. The podcast is www.youtube.com/user/voice of the Republic 1. Check out mine at www.youtube.com/user/14mrdas. And also check out Rory's at www.youtube.com/user/separatist destroyers. And don't forget to check out Lizzie's website. Let's see if I can get this right first time.
I'll give you money if you can.
Sempernaimodian.weebly.com.
No, almost. Sempernamoidiana.
Close enough. So
you failed.
Sempernamoidiana.weebly.com.
Thank you, Liz. And
You're welcome.
check out the Forcebook at www.theforcebook.com. And also check out John Morton's credit on the Internet Movie Database at www.imbd.com/name/NM06080014. And don't forget to check out our friends at the Clone Wars Weekly podcast, www.facebook.com/pages/Clone Wars Weekly. And don't forget to check out channel 1138 on Facebook, where we broadcast to you live every Friday night on www.facebook.com/channel1138. And finally, check out our sponsor, Hunter Toys, on Facebook at www.facebook.com/pages/Hunter Toys. So it was definitely a fun episode tonight.
Was it?
Well,
Great fun.
It started everybody very concentrated with the interview, and then we just broke down, to put it in some way.
I've got a horrible feeling it was when I asked him if he liked Nemoidians.
Yes, it so was.
I'm so sorry. Get used to it. I'm going to be asking every actor I get to interview that.
God.
And I feel bad because I think I might have been the one that suggested that.
Well,
Yeah,
just
slightly.
just
maybe.
just think it won't be as unknown to when we get Neimoidian people on.
Yeah.
They'll be, oh yeah.
I have
I
got
can't wait for that.
So I have got 4 words of advice for any cast or crew member listening regarding Lizzie's Neimoidian questions.
I think I know what you are gonna say.
Just run fair.
Oh yeah.
Just run far. I'm not that bad.
Run even faster.
Oh, thanks. Is this coming from the female unicorn man?
Well, maybe he's done the female rabbit horseman.
So yeah. So did you enjoy tonight, Lizzie?
Absolutely fantastic. Well, I used to do another podcast called the Forcebook Fangirls, and I'm hoping that will come back at some point, preferably not at 4 a.m. But doing that was some of my best Star Wars memories. I got to help interview Joe Caroni, which was absolutely fantastic. So yeah, this is so great getting to do this again. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. But for the meantime, you have to put up with the other 2 fangirls that are here.
Yeah, Daniela and Angelina.
Oh, but yes. So, from John.
Truina.
But yeah, so from John, Adrian, who disappeared, Lizzie, Rory, and me, Daniel. May the force be with you, Star Wars fans.
You.